The Georgia story in 2026 is not one headline. It is a slow fracture line running under suburbs that were treated like guaranteed winners just 2 years ago. For a while, Metro Atlanta felt untouchable. People poured in, investors chased the same zip codes, builders rushed to pour slabs, sellers got used to the idea that asking price was only the opening bid. Now the mood is changing, and the numbers are starting to admit it out loud. Redfin shows Atlanta prices slightly down year over year, with homes taking longer to sell and fewer closings than last January. Zillow shows Atlanta home values down over the past year. Realtor.com's local update also points to price softening and rising inventory. Then there is the psychological shift. WSB and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution both highlighted Redfin data showing roughly 7 in 10 Metro Atlanta homes sold below the original asking price in 2025. That is not trivia. That is the market teaching buyers that waiting works. So this video is not about a fantasy crash. It is about where the cracks spread first, where price cuts become normal, where days on market stretch, where sellers have to compete again. Now, let's count them down.
Number 10. Woodstock. Woodstock was built on a promise that felt bulletproof. A polished downtown, a commute people tolerated because the lifestyle felt worth it. Neighborhoods that looked like stability you could purchase. For years, Woodstock benefited from a powerful mix: families wanting space, buyers priced out of closer-in areas, and newcomers choosing Cherokee County for the suburban upgrade. The vulnerability in 2026 is that Woodstock is a momentum suburb. It grew fast, and fast growth behaves like a booster rocket on the way up, then becomes heavy weight on the way down. When affordability squeezes the buyer pool, the first places to feel it are the ones powered by emotion and urgency. People bought because they feared being left behind. Investors bought because they assumed the next buyer would pay more. When urgency fades, Woodstock turns into a waiting game. Listings that would have disappeared in a weekend start sitting long enough to feel stale. Sellers who expected multiple offers start hearing silence. Buyers become selective because they have time, and time is what sellers hate most. Woodstock also lives in the middle-tier pressure zone. It is not the cheapest option, but it is also not a prestige enclave where wealth shrugs off a higher monthly payment. Middle-tier buyers are the most payment-sensitive buyers, and in 2026, payment sensitivity controls the market. The crack does not arrive like a dramatic collapse. It arrives like erosion. A small price cut becomes 2. Concessions return quietly. Closing costs get offered again. And once one seller blinks, the neighborhood ceiling resets. Then the next listing has to compete against that new reality, not last year's memory. If you want to spot it early, watch for homes returning to market after a failed contract. That's where the story leaks first, before the price chart admits it.
Number 9. Smyrna. Smyrna has always been marketed as the perfect in-between, close enough to Atlanta to feel connected, far enough to feel suburban, positioned near job corridors that kept demand strong even when other areas softened. For a long time, Smyrna felt protected because it offered something rare: location without the full city price tag. In 2026, Smyrna is getting squeezed from both sides. On one side, you have buyers who would have targeted Smyrna during the frenzy, but now the monthly payment feels like a second rent. Mortgage rates around 6% still create a world where buyers are extremely sensitive to payment changes, and national reporting has shown demand can stall quickly when the market does not deliver affordability. On the other side, Smyrna faces substitutes. If Smyrna stops feeling like a value play, buyers pivot to other Cobb options, other perimeter pockets, other neighborhoods where their payment stretches further. That pivoting behavior is deadly because it turns Smyrna into a comparison market. In a comparison market, being slightly overpriced is not a small mistake. It becomes months of sitting. Smyrna's housing mix accelerates that effect.
Older homes that need updates get punished first because buyers now price in renovation costs. Townhome-heavy pockets reprice faster because comps are obvious and units compete side by side. Newer homes bought near the peak become trapped listings because those sellers have less room to cut without losing money. This is how cracks form without a crash headline. A seller lists at yesterday's optimism. The listing sits. Then the first price cut happens, then another. Then buyers start treating below-list offers as normal instead of aggressive. The moment you start seeing multiple similar listings in the same pocket, all adjusting price within a short window, Smyrna stops being a location story and becomes a term story. And once a suburb becomes a term story, the buyer is in control.
Number 8. Kennesaw. Kennesaw grew into a brand. It became the symbol of attainable family life. Bigger homes, newer neighborhoods, and a steady pipeline of buyers who wanted Cobb County without paying the premium of the most elite school clusters. That pipeline made Kennesaw feel safe. But 2026 exposes a different truth. Kennesaw is sensitive because it sits on the affordability fault line. When rates rise or simply stay elevated, the payment shock hits this tier first. Luxury buyers have flexibility. Entry-level buyers hunt bargains. The middle tier feels trapped. Too expensive to be cheap, too ordinary to be insulated. Redfin's Atlanta market snapshot shows longer selling timelines and fewer sales compared with last year, which fits the broader story of buyers moving slower and acting cautious again. That caution shows up hard in suburbs like Kennesaw because the decision is often tied to family budgets and monthly payment ceilings. Kennesaw also has a lot of similar inventory. Similarity is a disadvantage in a slowing market. When buyers can compare 5 nearly identical homes within minutes, the overpriced one cannot hide. It becomes the stale listing everyone uses as leverage. And once a listing feels stale, buyers assume something is wrong, even if the home is fine. Then the neighborhood gets dragged into the grind. Sellers reduce price not because they want to, but because time forces their hand. Appraisals get tighter, inspection requests come back, repairs become negotiation chips again. And the biggest pain lands on recent buyers who have little equity buffer. Those listings look normal on the surface, but the price keeps changing because the seller cannot afford to be wrong for long. The crack in Kennesaw is not a dramatic cliff, it is the return of friction. Longer timelines, more negotiation, more deals that need concessions to survive. And once friction becomes normal, the market stops sprinting and starts dragging itself forward.
Number 7. Coming. Coming is one of the clearest examples of how fast growth becomes vulnerability. Forsyth County became a magnet for families who wanted space, schools, and newer communities. Demand surged and prices followed. For a while, Coming felt like a rocket ship, but rockets run out of fuel, and in 2026, the biggest change is simple. The buyer is no longer desperate. When the buyer is not desperate, the market has to justify itself with value, not momentum. Cumming's boom was powered by the belief that North Atlanta suburbs would climb forever. That belief created stretching budgets and aggressive bidding. People accepted long commutes because they assumed equity growth would reward the sacrifice. Now, buyers are calculating instead of chasing, and that calculation makes Cumming vulnerable because the payment is the real price. Cumming is also full of newer neighborhoods bought during peak optimism. Newer homes usually look like safety, but in a shifting market, they can become exposed because the seller has less cushion. A seller who bought brand new at top dollar cannot cut much without taking a loss, so they try to hold the line. The listing sits. Sitting becomes the story, and a listing that sits changes neighborhood psychology. Buyers see it and think, why rush? Sellers see it and think, maybe I missed the peak. The substitution effect hits hard here too. If a buyer is willing to live that far out, they compare Cumming with other fast growth exurbs and widen their search radius until the payment feels reasonable. That is how value gets enforced, not through headlines, but through buyers quietly refusing to overpay. Watch what happens when incentives show up in nearby new builds. Builders can lower the monthly payment with rate buydowns and credits while protecting the headline price. Resale sellers cannot match that without cutting. When buyers start using builder deals as leverage, Cummings' resale market starts repricing one listing at a time.
Number 6. Marietta. Marietta feels like a safe word in metro Atlanta real estate. Established neighborhoods, strong demand anchors, and a reputation that is held up through multiple cycles. That reputation is exactly why Marietta can crack in a way that surprises people, because safe markets are slower to admit reality, then adjust all at once. The myth is that stable suburbs are immune. They are not. They are simply slower. They resist first, then recalibrate, and in 2026, the recalibration pressure is building because buyers are behaving differently. Redfin shows Atlanta homes taking longer to sell compared with last year and fewer sales closing, which signals a market where buyers have time again. Time is a weapon. When buyers have time, they compare every listing and punish anything that feels overpriced. Marietta also has a mixed inventory that creates a harsh divide in a slower market. Updated homes still move. Normal homes sit. Older homes needing renovation get punished because buyers now price in repair reality. During boom years, buyers ignored flaws to win. In 2026, flaws are negotiation currency. The crack in Marietta shows up in expectations. Sellers anchored to peak comps list like it is still the frenzy. Buyers anchored to monthly payment reality respond with caution. They ask for credits. They negotiate inspection items aggressively. They walk away when a seller refuses to budge because the buyer believes another option will appear. And it often starts in the middle tier. Not luxury, not bargain, the middle. That is where affordability pressure hits hardest and where the buyer pool shrinks first. Once that buyer group steps back, listings stack, sellers cut to stand out, and buyers begin expecting discounts as normal. Marietta does not need to become undesirable to reprice. It only needs buyers to stop believing the premium is automatic. When the premium is no longer automatic, every seller has to earn it, and earning it usually means concessions.
Number 5. Roswell. Roswell sells a feeling. Tree-lined streets, historic charm, a sense of quiet wealth without shouting. It is the kind of suburb people imagine when they picture leaving the city but keeping the lifestyle. That is exactly why Roswell is cracking in 2026, because when a market sells a feeling, it can become overpriced relative to the math. During the boom, buyers paid for the dream. They paid for charm, location, and the belief that this lifestyle would never be available again. Fear created inflated pricing, and inflated pricing is what breaks first when the buyer becomes rational again. In 2026, Roswell faces a buyer who still loves the area but is willing to walk away when the numbers do not make sense. That shift is already supported by broader Atlanta indicators showing softer pricing and slower activity. When buyers slow down, they notice details they ignored before: roof age, foundation questions, outdated kitchens, layout problems, the cost of updating an older home. Roswell has many older homes, and in a slower market, older homes sell on discount unless they are truly updated. So Roswell's crack forms along renovation lines. Updated homes still attract demand, but buyers negotiate harder. Homes needing work sit. Sellers cut. Those cuts create new comps that pull the market down quietly. Roswell also sits inside a competitive ring. Buyers compare Roswell with Alpharetta, Johns Creek, Milton, and Sandy Springs. If Roswell pricing drifts too close to the most elite neighbors, buyers either step up to the prestige suburb or step away to a cheaper substitute. And stepping away is easier in a market with more selection and longer timelines. The moment you see Roswell listings stacking price changes in their history, you are watching the market remove emotion and replace it with math.
Number 4. Sandy Springs. Sandy Springs is a suburb with city energy. Corporate corridors, dense pockets, high-end neighborhoods, condo towers, townhomes, and classic single-family streets all living in the same zip code. That diversity made Sandy Springs feel like a safe bet because if one segment cooled, another would stay hot. In 2026, that diversity becomes a weakness because different housing types respond to market shifts at different speeds, and the fastest-moving segment often drags the rest. Condos and townhomes reprice quickly because comps are obvious. When inventory stacks in a building or a complex, price cuts become visible. Visibility changes perception, and perception is powerful in real estate. Sandy Springs also sits in the squeeze zone, where buyers compare it directly to Atlanta. When the city cools, some buyers move closer in if the price gap narrows. Others move farther out if they want more space for the same payment. That pushes Sandy Springs into a competition problem because it must justify its premium on convenience while buyers are obsessed with monthly cost. Local coverage has described Atlanta inventory rising with prices softening, a combination that gives buyers more options and more patience. Patience shows up as slower decisions and tougher negotiations. Buyers calculate condo fees, they calculate HOA dues, they calculate renovation budgets. They ask whether the location premium is worth it compared with a nearby alternative. This is the crack pattern in Sandy Springs. More days on market, more listings that relist, more price reductions, more sellers offering credits to keep deals alive. And because the market contains many comparable properties, one reduction can reset the tone for an entire pocket quickly. When Sandy Springs shifts, it rarely announces itself. It reveals itself in how sellers start explaining instead of expecting. And once sellers start explaining, buyers start negotiating harder.
Number 3. Johns Creek. Johns Creek is one of Georgia's most coveted suburban brands. Reputation, schools, polished neighborhoods, and the kind of identity that makes buyers feel safe spending big money. That is why the cracks here matter. Because brand-priced markets carry a premium, and premiums are fragile when affordability tightens. The buyer who shops Johns Creek is often stretching. Not always, but often. They are paying for the name and what the name represents. In a hot market, buyers do not question that premium. In a cooler market, buyers start asking what they actually get for the price and whether the premium still makes sense with a heavier monthly payment. Atlanta area indicators show softer pricing and slower activity, which means even strong suburbs are living inside a changing metro system. And the biggest change is negotiation becoming normal. When nearly 7 in 10 metro Atlanta homes sold below original asking price in 2025, it taught buyers a new habit: do not pay the first number. That habit is deadly for premium suburbs because the premium depends on buyer urgency. If buyers believe waiting produces discounts, they wait. They negotiate harder, they demand concessions, and the market begins grading listings harshly. Perfect homes still sell. Normal homes sit. Outdated homes get punished. The gap between flawless and average widens. Johns Creek also faces competition from neighboring prestige suburbs. Alpharetta and Milton are constant comparison points. That means Johns Creek has to defend its pricing not just against the market, but against its peers. If a buyer can stretch a little more and move up, or save a little and move sideways, the Johns Creek premium gets questioned. The crack here is selective demand. Demand is still there, but it is careful, and careful demand does not support peak pricing.
Number 2. Alpharetta. Alpharetta became one of Metro Atlanta's crown jewels. Tech adjacency, lifestyle branding, in the feeling that you were buying into the future. During the boom, Alpharetta turned into a symbol. And symbols tend to overshoot because people stop buying houses and start buying narratives. In 2026, Alpharetta is cracking because 3 forces are colliding at once. First is affordability. Alpharetta price points demand strong income, strong savings, or strong equity. Even well-qualified buyers are sensitive to payment when rates remain around 6%. And national reporting has shown pending sales can still weaken when the market does not deliver affordability and supply balance. Second is expectations. Sellers got used to the idea that the market would reward any listing. Now the market grades listings harshly. Anything overpriced sits. Anything needing repairs loses momentum. Anything with an obvious flaw gets negotiated down. Third is competition. Growth created more options, more neighborhoods, more comparable listings, and when buyers have options, they stop rushing. Atlanta's longer selling timelines support that shift in behavior, and once buyers slow down, Alpharetta's premium has to defend itself with value instead of confidence. The most vulnerable segment is the one bought at peak optimism. Homes purchased recently with minimal buffer. Those sellers cannot cut much, but the market demands cuts to move inventory. That is where cracking becomes real, because the seller is trapped between what they owe and what the buyer will pay. Alpharetta's narrative used to be unstoppable. In 2026, the story becomes measurable. Days on market, price reduction frequency, concessions creeping back into deals. And once the buyer believes a deal is possible here, the entire psychology shifts because a symbol suburb losing urgency changes the mood across the whole north side.
Number 1. Milton. Milton is the suburb people assume is untouchable. Prestige, big lots, gated communities, newer estates, and an image of wealth that feels insulated from normal pressure. That is why Milton is the most shocking place to see cracks. But the cracks matter, because Milton sits at the top of the pyramid, and when the top shifts, everything underneath feels it. Prestige suburbs are not immune to cycles. They are simply slower to admit them, and the moment they admit them, the reprice can be sudden, because the buyer pool is smaller and the stakes are higher. Milton listings are unique, expensive, and time-consuming to transact even in good times. In a slower market, time stretches dramatically, and time is the enemy of high-priced listings. The longer a listing sits, the more it becomes a negotiation target. Buyers assume something is wrong, sellers grow impatient, agents push for reductions. Eventually, the seller adjusts, not because they want to, but because the market forces it. Atlanta's broader indicators point to slower activity and value softness, and Milton does not live outside that reality. It lives inside it, with higher stakes. A small percentage adjustment in Milton is an enormous dollar adjustment, and those dollar adjustments are what reset prestige psychology. When one Milton deal closes lower than expected, it becomes an anchor. Appraisers use it, buyers use it, sellers can no longer pretend it does not exist. Milton also faces a subtle 2026 risk. Luxury buyers are picky, and they compare widely. If Milton does not feel like a value relative to other high-end options, buyers choose another market or choose to wait. Waiting becomes the weapon, and in 2026, buyers are learning patience across the board. The crack in Milton is not chaos, it is doubt replacing certainty. And once certainty is gone at the top, the rest of the market stops pretending the old rules still apply.